Welcome to the Phoenix Downbeat. I'm Drew Kreisman, along with my brother Ira Kreisman. You know us as the Everything is Final Fantasy podcast, and as always, now I'm glad that I get to say as always that this is a regular thing with our friend Ryan Laney of Airship Overdrive. We're going to be breaking down some Final Fantasy music for you. On this one, we're doing town themes, very similar to the way we did intros and setup music. We're going to be talking about various town themes. We're going to start with three that were previously agreed upon. One from Final Fantasy 1. Why not start at the very beginning with the first town theme? One that Ira and I wouldn't have let the conversation go on without discussing from Final Fantasy 6. Kids run through the city, potentially the corner, whether or not you're into that sort of violence. It sounds so rough. And from Final Fantasy 9, we will be discussing Dali. Now, in addition to that, each one of us has brought us a prize piece of music that we are going to share with the group and talk a little bit about. But before we get to all of that, Ryan's got a question from the Before Times.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As always, guys, I'm loving these episodes and loving talking about Final Fantasy music. So I got a question from someone named Melissa that sent my way about our last episode. And last episode, we talked about the song To Xanarkand from Final Fantasy X. And Melissa wrote and she says, "Hi, those chords and melodies you played while talking about To Xanarkand were so beautiful, and I really like the sound of what I think you called a major 7 ? Are there any other genres of music that sound like that? Thanks, Melissa." And the chord she's talking about, yes, it's called a major 7 chord. For those of us at home, it's just simply a major triad. So if you take a C major, and if you add the 7th scale degree, which would be a B natural here, you get this very beautiful open setting. And if I had to write a textbook response to say, hey, what other music uses that? Look up Impressionism. And yes, it is in that same realm as the art world's Impressionism, things like Monet and Van Gogh and all those kinds of things. But Impressionism was also a musical movement at the same time. The most well-known people that did this were Debussy and Ravel, most likely. There were others in that same vein. And one of the ones that you've probably heard in a commercial or something along those lines before is the Gymnopedes by Eric Satie. I'm going to play a little clip of one of them right here. It sounds like this. And that is literally just the same 2 major 7 chords back and forth, the G major 7 and a D major 7. So if you're looking for that kind of style, look up Impressionism, starting with probably Debussy and Satie are the key points to go with. But anyways, moving on.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. I love it. Always here for extra recommendations, too. So without further ado, let us listen to probably the entirety. It's not that long. This is back when, video game music was still in its primitive times. But what a beautiful piece of... Now, we're playing the original on this one. I think this is the first time we've really hit the ears with the 8-bit sound. But I think it's worth it to go back and especially listen to the evolution of Uematsu over the years. So Town 1 from Final Fantasy 1. And then that can loop forever.
Yeah, that right there was already 2 times through the exact same thing. That's how short it is.
And it has been rearranged, and as we talked about with To Xanarkand, a lot of flowery stuff added to it. There's been acoustic guitar and violin renditions from official Square Enix stuff over the years that's absolutely gorgeous. But even, the text of it all is right here in this original 8-bit version.
Yeah. Did you guys notice anything towards the end of that? There's a little hidden nugget that Uematsu put in there from another very, very well-known piece. Did either of you catch it?
No.
Play it back from about maybe the 10-second mark, and when it gets to this part here, there's something in the background that I want you to listen for.
Is it the arpeggio in the background we're listening to there?
Yeah, he kind of snuck in the prelude again.
A little prelude for you? A little taste of the... Oh, so good.
So when you guys hear this song, how does it make you feel? It's literally just called Town.
Yeah, it's a chill piece. I really like town musics in general because when you think about pacing of a story, of a narrative, if it's all action all the time, it's too intense. It starts to feel flat, and so having the quiet moments really helps. Nowadays, in the now times, when I think of town music, my quintessential one at this point is Concerning Hobbits, Howard Shore from Lord of the Rings, right? Even though I was a Final Fantasy fan first, but I think that's that kind of attitude. This place is nice and chill, and it's places like this that are the reason we go on to fight chaos, because otherwise there won't be a Shire.
Yeah, there's gonna be something worth saving, right? The stakes have to actually have stakes involved with them.
Yeah, I also think of this one and the one from Final Fantasy II in that similar, like, quiet town, peaceful village. The Shire, I actually think the second Final Fantasy II's town music has a bit in there that sounds exactly like a bit from Concerning Hobbits, but it's... I love these as well, and for this particular one, it's got those little walkie steps down that always make me so happy when at the very end there. Yeah, this is a technical musical term, right?
The walkie downs, duh.
It's a walkie step down. The ba da 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 bum bum bum. Yeah.
Something really clever that Uematsu does with this, and again, I could sing his praises for hours upon hours, which I will, is that he does a really good job, even in this very simple 8-measure town theme, by doing two things. The first one is obviously video game music, generally speaking, has to loop, right? Unless it's something that's like set to a cutscene or set to a story beat or something, it has to loop. And he does a really nice way of giving us a varied sound in this theme. It's only 8 bars long, but we've got some nice secondary dominant action. We have a nice little borrowed chord going to the flat 3 towards the end there. And one thing that I love is that, much like back to our discussion about Liberi Fatali, it ends this little thing on one of those sus chords we talked about a while back. And then it goes back into the original. And aside from that, it's a very like simple melody. It never really, except for one note, goes out of the key, never has any non-diatonic tones. But he also makes it in a way where we are harmonically diverse. It's not just your typical 1-4-5 chords where it's just the whole entire time. Have either of you ever played a game, like probably from the NES era, where that was the music you heard on loop forever?
Almost certainly.
Yeah. It just sounded like that era of gaming. It was like, I've played that game. I don't know what it's called, but I've played that game.
Yeah, a great example of this is the Donkey Kong, like original arcade cabinet Donkey Kong. This was the entire melody you heard. And it's literally just the same one measure based around a C major arpeggio, the entire thing, because they didn't have the limitation or restrictions broken enough to actually make full stuff. Right. And Uematsu, he worked with his team, worked with the people who programmed Final Fantasy 1 to say, hey, we're going to actually like divert resources on the cartridge and, pull the most that we can out of the NES or the Famicom's base chip hardware to make a varied soundtrack of a variety of things, right?
Yeah.
And I love also how when he goes from the first phrase, which is only 4 bars long, to the second phrase, he could have very easily just gone from like C major, G major to A minor when it goes... when it does that little step down. He could have easily just gone, but instead he does this really cool thing called a secondary dominant. He goes from C major to E7, which is a really like out of the blue thing, into A minor. So we get this sound instead. And by doing that, he's pushing us forward, pushing us along, even though I'm probably getting some plosives on my microphone there. He's pushing us forward, pushing us along with this interesting little kind of just like shove forward. And for you guys, for the lay musicians in the room, what does this sound like if I play this compared to the other way we could have done it?
Well, the second one sounds like that very famous piece that you play at weddings. What is that called? I know it.
Yeah. The canon. Are you talking about the canon?
Sure. Yeah. Pocket Bells.
Oh, canon. Yeah. Pocket Bells canon.
That's what the second one reminded me of.
Which is totally fair because Pocket Bells canon uses that progression. It's like one of the most standard progressions in the world. Okay. So you're not crazy for hearing that.
So does the song "Hook" by Blues Traveler. I'm pretty sure. I think it's that one, or there's one of their famous ones that uses that exact same bum 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 bum.
Yeah. And then it's just that over and over again.
Yeah. The second one feels much more like getting ready for something with a little bit more tension and anxiety, a little extra like energy juice to it, whereas the first one just feels like it's very pretty and it sits there and it's nice, like the canon piece, right? It's not, you shouldn't be building anxiety at the wedding, probably. I would think, right?
You shouldn't. Yes, I agree.
I would think. So I think that this other one has that sense of, because we talked about the town theme being very gentle and like, oh, this is the quiet place, but Uematsu is also a storyteller, so he's getting us ready for the places that aren't going to be quite so quiet.
Yeah, something that he's doing when you have the more tense version, and it was the first one I played. I think we may have switched them around, but the first one I played, it has, if you listen to it and you break down each line, there's just the same G note that moves forward in both chords and then up to an A. So if you've got your G in a C major, and then your same G in a G major, and then it finally goes up to A minor, there's not that much tension. But if you follow that one line, this is where we get into things like voice leading. We have that same G up here into, and there's this more tension, like Drew was just saying, where it's pushing us forward towards something. And he moves us up into the A minor area, walks around for a little bit. We have this really flavorful little, and it just loops so seamlessly, so beautifully without feeling too tense. It's designed so that if you're in this area for, let's say, 10 minutes straight and you're hearing the same 8 measures of music over and over again, it's not going to get grating anytime soon. You can actually enjoy it, listen to it, and it kind of shakes up the harmony a little, even though the melody is very simple. All right.
Our next piece, we jump forward 6 games or 5, depending on what you want to. Don't do that. We're going to talk about a piece of music from Final Fantasy VI is how I'm going to land on that. Called, I'll just go with Kids Run Through the City.
good.
Oh.
So asking the lay people in the room yet again, how does that song make you feel without using musical terms or diving into the theory? Just how do you feel?
This one just reminds me of my childhood. This one's too hard to separate from. It just feels and sounds and yeah, this is one of the most just sort of personal nostalgic pieces for me to listen to. Kind of like you were saying with the last one, it would play a lot. Final Fantasy VI was our first that we really sank our teeth into and played all the way to the end. And in the early goings, you hear this piece a lot, and you would walk around in town a lot. And it just sort of endeared me to the world, and in that way very much endeared me to the world of all of Final Fantasy ultimately. And so it's just such a pleasant piece. And sometimes I think of the cobblestone streets, but it's hard for me not just to go back and like think about holding a Super Nintendo controller and playing the game with my brother. And I love this piece of music, and it's hard for me to even think about it outside of those memories,
Narratively, this comes after we talked last time in the intro, a couple times ago in the intro, we have this big thing and there's all this history with this world. And then Terra falls down a hole and you fight your future allies, really. And you escape into the world. And this is the first place you get to rest. Right. So in Final Fantasy I, when we were just talking about, you go into town immediately, presumably, because you got nothing. But in this one, you have to experience a little hardship first. And while this is another gentler, quieter, more mellow piece compared to, for example, battle music, I feel like there is a little more tension here. There is, especially when you get to the second paragraph, as it were. Mm-hmm. It's got a little more to say than the previous piece. I feel like there's the political tension and the looming war and the coming invasion are all not quite foreshadowed, but it acknowledges to some degree that while this may be a peaceful, idyllic place, there is a little bit of something else going on.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I was going to bring up on this one when I was preparing, is that it does, to Drew's point, sound very like idyllic and very nostalgic. It's in 3/4 time. It's kind of got this waltzy sort of sound to it, which inherently makes you think of like romanticism, and it's very much emotional. You're not in the middle of a battle. You're not in the middle of some like very trying, hardship, even though, yes, in the game, there are some background stuff like Ira just said. But at the same time, it's very like consoling or comforting almost. And one of the things that Ira just said, where it's like there's something in the background that's not quite right. There's like some political stuff going on or wars on the horizon, whatever the case is. And in the first quote unquote paragraph, like Ira said, there's a really clever thing that Uematsu does where he delays the resolution of a melody. When we get to this part here, it sounds something like this, I believe. Whoops. That's not right. Hang on. I got this. I can do this. I swear. And that's what it could have sounded like, is just very like plaintive and very normal. But that note that he puts in the middle there could have just been. And it just ends the phrase right there. But not only that, he doesn't do what I played the first time, where it would normally just be another D chord. We're in the key of G, so a D is going to be your dominant 5 chord. Instead, he turns it into a C diminished 7 chord. So we get this sound into, and then... And it's not as like intense as I'm playing it here because they kind of arpeggiate it and it's a little more relaxed. But you can still hear, if you break it out, that he's playing a C diminished 7 chord across that. And it's this weird sense of tension, but he's still giving you the resolution at the end there. It's another kind of trick from the romanticism, the romantic era of music, where they would delay the satisfaction of ending something. A lot of stuff from that era, it had to do with the emotional, surprise, surprise, it's called the Romantic era, about the emotional responses that music could pull from somebody. And so it was a lot less about the technical prowess of the compositions, and it was more about how can we make this sound like some emotional string pulling, basically. And there's a whole discussion to be had about kind of the era from Romanticism into the postmodernist serialism and 12-tone type stuff. But even at the very end of the entire piece here, it ends with that same little number. But then on the turnaround, he throws this chord in there.
I was going to say, there's a random chord that just sits there for a second for him to loop off of.
Yes. And if you were to look at this from the musical theory perspective, you could end this phrase again, one of two easy ways. Either you just end on the tonic, which is our one chord, it's the main chord that we're in for our key, and then just loop back to the beginning. There's nothing wrong with that because we're already back to our home base, so to say. Or you could use your 5 chord, your dominant, and just simply go. That's the easiest way to do it. But instead, he puts this extra layer of tension, of dissonance in there. So instead of just going from G to maybe D major back to G like this, he goes. And so it's just going to have this weirdly tense moment that then turns us right back around to the before you know it. But yet it's this really clever thing where it's both calming and kind of resolute, but also unsettling, which is really just, I mean, of course, it's Uematsu, he's a master. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, I think the one word I wanted to use when Ira was talking earlier that didn't quite form until just now was it's a little darker too. I think it's just a little bit, those things give it that edge of, yeah, this is a world that's kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. And, the fascistic empire is encroaching on everywhere. And so this may be an idyllic town now, but, for how long? And again, he does a lot of that storytelling just in the piece.
What do you guys think about the decision to name this piece something referring to children? Because again, it's called something, depending on the translation, it's called Kids Run Through the City, Kids Run Through the City Corner, Through the Street, some variation of that. What do you guys think about the choice to name it something with children in the title?
We're thinking about the future here, I think.
Yeah.
We talk about the hope baby as a trope a lot. The baby who's born on the adventure or during some time of crisis, and sometimes literally named Hope, which I think is going a bit far. But it's that idea that whatever else is going on here, if you've got a baby, then in the story, then that is the person you're fighting for, as much as the town in Final Fantasy 1. And there are lots of kids in this game. There are kids all over this game, and then a bunch of kids play an important role in the world of Ruin. And then a couple of them are in the party, right? So, and I think Final Fantasy does that a lot. There's a lot of this world belongs to the children as much as anybody, and we can't just put our pollution into a giant tree, or it will become evil.
Was that Final Fantasy V that did that? Where the tree it became X Death, and then all that stuff.
Yeah, like you do.
I have a music theory question, but I don't know if it's actually music theory, because does music theory these days respond to or take into account video game music?
Oh my goodness. So here's the kind of back of the box statement I'll say about music theory is that the theory always comes after the practice. That's the same way with most things that have a theoretical side to it, right? Someone does something and then someone else says, can we classify this in some way so that we can repeat it down the road? Much like a story archetype. Someone did it without realizing it, and then someone else went, oh, I like that story archetype. Let's use that again going forward, whether they really realize it or not. Music theory, if I put it in like the big, academia terms, to my knowledge, I've never seen a video game used in a music theory textbook or any, capital M music theory course sort of thing. But because it's made with the same stuff as anything from Mozart to Rossini to John Williams or whatever, it's all that same DNA in some way or another. It should be, in my opinion. If I was in charge of writing a music theory textbook, I guarantee Nobuo Uematsu and John Williams would be two of the biggest names in there because of how fantastic it is. But a lot of music theory, unfortunately, it's based on who started doing it first. And so because aside from orchestration, instrumentation, the sound of the instruments you're using, which in this case is a lot of synthetic type stuff for video games, because all those premises were done 100 or 200 years ago, video game composers aren't going to be as notable on it. And that kind of gets into discussion as well, as far as like, well, what left is there? What else is there to figure out in music theory? And you get into pitch theory stuff, and it gets really out there, but it's stuff that was essentially solved about 100 years ago anyway. Okay. But that's a whole nother discussion that we could have sometime.
One thing I think would be, not to get too far afield, but this is an interesting topic and it's what we're here for, I think would be really interesting on this is the more modern video game music that is made to adapt. I'm thinking particularly about like Remake and Rebirth. I know they didn't invent it, others have done it, but the way like the piece of music evolves or changes if you get into battle or as things are happening based on what the player does. I think that could be an interesting way to start thinking about video game composers as being on the cutting edge of something of adaptive, responsive music. Like that's very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
That's so the reason I asked that was because of looping, right? You don't necessarily get that in an opera. I know you can have a repeat, but that would be something, if not unique to, certainly something that video games were required to do. That was one of the restrictions. But this song starts with that 4-note bum 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 bum, and then it does the thing. And I don't think that part is part of the loop, is it?
No, that's just a little intro, and then the loop starts on the actual stuff. Which, by the way, I'm glad you mentioned that too. Finish what you were saying, and then I'm going to bring up something else on that intro.
So my question about music theory is there a music theory term or explanation for how people do solve that problem of how do you make it loop and not be annoying?
I will definitely refer anyone with that question to our wonderful friends over at 8-Bit Music Theory, because they talk about that exact thing in a few videos about how do you make kind of reactive music. Drew had another term for like adaptive or something a minute ago. But yeah, there really is an art to it of making stuff that does not sound super repetitive, that reacts to what you're doing as the player, but also matches what it wants to do. Because I shouldn't just throw like, oh, here's a Final Fantasy song and a Banjo-Kazooie song and a Last of Us song all on the same line and just hope it works well. They really are like inextricably like linked to each other. And like I was just saying, in Broadway opera type stuff, they have what's called like a vamp section, where it's basically just, hey, until this thing on the stage happens, the pit just keeps playing the same 1 or 2 bars over and over, and then the conductor gives a little cue. Now we go on to the next part, right? But even then, the way that 99% of Broadway's and opera shows are written is it's still an A to B format. It's here's the start of the song or the show, the performance, here's the end of the song, and you just simply play everything in between in the exact same order. But in a video game, it's up to the player in many ways of what that order is. If they change towns, if they do a transition, to the overworld theme, there's a whole world of discussion to be had on that exact concept.
Yeah. Well, that's something I definitely want to return to in the future for sure, because I'm absolutely fascinated by the concept of composing something that needs to be able to at any moment like ramp up. That's very interesting. So, or down, as it were.
Or it can also be very jarring. And I think of one example, which, by the way, this should be a whole entire episode another time, of when the background music doesn't change when a battle starts. That's a whole nother discussion. But I remember there was one time playing Final Fantasy X, this was years and years ago, and there was somewhere, maybe it was like the Macalania Forest or something, with very like subtle, serene music. And then you have a literal glass shatter for the combat music to start. And it like startled me because I didn't realize that there might be combats happening in wherever this area was. And so transitions like that you can't always account for, or when you do, it's just kind of like, well, here's what it is, we're going to have combats in this area, so the music will be as calming as the director wants, but you might still have a very jarring transition that even Uematsu can't escape sometimes.
That's absolutely fascinating.
The other thing I wanted to say on this one with the intro there is at the beginning, notice how most of the song, it's all like in tempo. It's just like one tempo the whole entire way. But this one does something really unique that is very bizarre, especially for a Super Nintendo era game. It could have just simply gone, and then we get into it. But instead, he kind of pushes and pulls the tempo a little.
Yeah.
And then it goes into it. This the fancy term for that in music is called rubato, which is basically where you can kind of flexibly move the tempo however you desire. It's very easy when you're playing by yourself. It's much harder when you have an ensemble you're trying to conduct or play along with. But yeah, if you've got it queued up, play those first few seconds and then a few seconds of the main theme, and we're just gonna hear simply like what this transition sounds like and how odd this is for most music of this era. Yeah. And then it goes straight into the tempo and it stays there, I think, through the whole entire thing. This was another thing that from that romantic era, if you ever listen to like a Chopin serenade or something, where they would do what they called the Chopin rubato, which was left hand was doing a very constant rhythm, and then the right hand was doing all this flourishy stuff, pushing and pulling the tempo. And it was this way of creating that sense of longing and that desire, that natural desire to be like, no, the left hand and right hand should line up, shouldn't they? And they were like, no, we're just gonna have the left hand stay nice and stable, and the right hand, you just do whatever you want, man.
You just feel free to to live your dreams. And if you listen to the official Piano Collections rendition of this piece, it's very bendy, fluidy. I'm sorry, rubato. I just learned a word. Come on, use it.
This is good though. I love that you guys can use these like layperson terms because again, one of the big goals of this series is we're explaining and talking about music if you don't have a music degree, if you haven't taken a music theory class. And so if you're calling it's this bendy, flexy, weird, wibbly wobbly stuff, hey, that's wonderful because that means you're hearing it and you're talking about it and you're realizing it as something that impacts the game experience. And that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's something that as I listen to music sort of intuited over the years, and because I play a lot of my stuff on my own on an acoustic guitar, when I first learned, you're playing everything in tempo as it goes, and I would write things, do it in this. Once I was like, hey, there's nobody else. There's not a band I'm going to mess up. I can get, and rhythm was like one of the first things I was really good at. So I didn't want to get loosey-goosey with it. Mm-hmm. But now when I listen to, especially piano or solo acoustic guitar music that gets really bendy with the time, I actually think of it more as stretching.
Yeah.
I think of it as stretching time out one way or the other. But it's really cool. That I'm not sure I 100% noticed that he had done it in the original like 16-bit version there, just in that little bit, but I'm guessing that's what whoever interpreted on the piano heard and went, oh, he wants me to bend time. He wants me to rubato this thing up.
Yeah, one of the things about music, like many other art forms, is you learn the rules so you can break the rules. Right. And you're talking to a percussionist here. I was a percussionist throughout college, and everything is very metronomic and very, very precise in a lot of percussion stuff. And learning how to break out of that and say, hey, we're going to do something a little more bendy, flexy, wibbly, wobbly on guitar, on piano, on clarinet, whatever you're playing. That's where like it really tests your ability, because anyone can play something at a tempo once they've got it practiced up and worked out, but it's playing it out of tempo and making it still sound good. That's where the real artistry and the real like proving that you have mastery over what you're doing, that's where that comes through.
Yeah. All right, let us take a listen to the Village of Dali from Final Fantasy IX.
pretty good.
It's pretty good. Are we going to talk about what's happening in Dali before we dive into the music?
Are we allowed to do that?
I feel like this one does not hint at what's going on beneath the surface.
Literally beneath the surface
Literally.
of Dali. Yeah, for those listening, to give a brief context, is there's something not quite right about the Village of Dali. It's one of the first main places you enter when you leave the first major hub town in Final Fantasy IX. And when you get there, it's just like something's off because it's very quaint, it's very pleasant, but you notice really quickly that there's like no adults around and there's not really like a cohesive, like what's going on here? And you hear weird things. Like I forget how that game hints it to you, but you'll go into an area and you'll like hear voices coming like from a vent or from a barrel or something weird.
There's a chocobo, but you can't find
it.
It's
just like weird stuff is going on. And this song here does a fantastic job of saying, hey, it's okay, it's relaxing, it's a little town. And then every now and then something pulls your ear that's like, something ain't right here. What's going on?
Yeah, there's some of my favorite, and again, I'm not sure what the actual technique. You've talked about diatonic and non-diatonic, and I'd always heard the term blue notes, right? And so I always
similar
thought of that at the end, in particular, that right before it loops, after all this pleasant stuff is happening, it just comes in with if it's like an oboe or a clarinet, especially the second time around, and those blue notes are some of my favorite. We're like, what is that sound? Why is he doing this to me after all of this pleasantness? It's
I've got things to say on this one. So first, because Final Fantasy IX, if you haven't played it before, many aspects of it were callbacks to previous Final Fantasies, to the point where literally there's a scene where they retell the story of Joseph from Final Fantasy II, like blatantly, here's something that happened in Final Fantasy II with the same character names and everything, right? So these very first chords we hear, they're really nice and calming and relaxing, and I'm guessing you guys didn't catch what those chords were doing, did you?
Almost certainly not.
So the first chord we hear is the fancy word for it is a C major add 9. For those at home, an add 9 chord is different from just a C9 chord, because if you have on the page C9, that implies that you have a 7 of some kind in there as well. And whenever you have extensions, these numbers that go on chords sometimes, it's generally assumed that you have everything between the base triad and whatever your extension number is. So if I see on the page C9, it would be C major plus my dominant 7 plus the 9. And you can keep going up to 11 and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This one, though, is just simply add 9. So you don't play that 7. So we get this sound instead. And there's that little bit of tension, that little bit of pull up here. And for those of us who can see it on the paper, and maybe if you guys remember from your music theory and music playing days, if I take the 9th note of the scale, which is basically going past the octave, what would that note be if I brought it back down an octave?
I didn't think there was going to be math.
So if 8 is 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 is 1, so 9 would be 2.
9 would be 2. So if we take this chord and we move the 9 down an octave, we get this. And if I play those 4 notes in a row...
Oh, rude.
It's the prelude melody. It's the prelude arpeggio. But he breaks it apart so that you can't hear it as like obviously, but he's calling back your internal sense to go, well, wait a minute, this is very comforting, very relaxing. It's literally the prelude of Final Fantasy, which is this very calming, very chill, at least the way it starts. And he starts it that way. Again, he's a genius. He's awesome. But then as we go through this song,
starts us at home base.
Yeah, it's basically our home base, nice and calm and relaxing. Yeah. And like you just said, every now and then he just kind of throws this little screwdriver, this little wrench in there that just makes things sound a little off, which fits the story very well because it's on its surface, literally, it's a very chill, normal town you might come across in an adventure game. But then every now and then he just throws something weird in there. And the very, very first one we have, if you spell it out normally, it would be an F7-9 with an implied sharp 4. So we get this sound, which is a really, really dissonant chord. If you played all of those notes together at the same time within one octave, you would get this sound. Which, yeah, if you guys at home could see Drew's face, he made the face like he just bit into a lime, like just, oh, like, whoa, what is that? It sounds really bad, but because like the prelude arpeggio was stretched out and broken apart, he did the same thing with our melody here, where the melody has that really tense note pulled away from everything else. So it's not quite as like in your face. It's deceptively dissonant without taking over, without kind of like, spoiling the whole stew, so to say.
Yeah. A little spice without overdoing it. Yeah.
Yeah, a little spice. And then as you go through this song, he just keeps doing that. And I have some notes written down that I put here about like talking about everything he does at this phrase and this phrase. And then I realized when I finished my notes on it, I was like, well, it's kind of the same thing where it sets us in a very comforting position. It sounds a little romantic. There's some extended harmonies. It's not your plain Jane sort of just 1, 4, 5 chords. But then at the end of each phrase, there's this little screwdriver that just... Yeah, it just pulls you and it makes you kind of like your ear just go, wait, what? And I think that was done super, super intentionally with where this song takes place. To my knowledge, it only plays in this village, doesn't play anywhere else in the game. And it's just giving you that hint of like, something's not quite right here. And to Drew's point about the diatonic melodies, which for those of us at home, if you don't remember, diatonic means it's a chord or a note that's in the key you're playing in. And if it's a non-diatonic note, then it's not in the key and it's going to produce some sort of dissonance most likely. And if you play the main melody of like the first paragraph, like I recalled it, if you play the main melody only and ignore the harmonies and the arpeggios and stuff, there's only one non-diatonic note in the whole thing, which I think is an even greater way of him saying, hey, on the surface, in the right hand of the piano, on top, everything's normal. There's no non-diatonic notes here, except for one, which is he does a little walk down. Or that little bit there, there's one non-diatonic note. And so on the right hand, on the top notes, it's like, oh, everything's fine, everything's normal. But the left hand is like, something's not normal in this town. Something's a brewing underground in the left hand in the town of Dali.
Oh, that's so clever. And I had long sensed that and never understood it.
That's it. I have other notes that I could talk about, but they really all boil down to that, where it's just there's something easy and chill in the right hand, but then every now and then something pulls your ear, the chocobo in the barrel or the chocobo underground, twists in the left hand, and then you go, huh? And then it just goes back to normal.
I have a question. You played Chrono Cross recently, is that right?
I did. I finished my first play. It would have been in the last month or so. I finished my first Chrono Cross play.
The hometown music in Home World of that game strikes me as having a similar vibe to Dali. What is that? Arn or Arnie or something?
Arnie, I think is in the version I played.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, it's been a long time. I did listen to it a little bit this morning trying to get ready, and they have a similar vibe to me. Is that instrumental? Is there a tone reason for that? Is it just because they come from a similar time period in my life and in the world?
Do you guys want me to take a quick break and I'll listen to it once just to refresh my memory?
I can bring it up right here. We can listen to it right here.
That works. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, similar to when we were talking about both the town theme from Final Fantasy 1 and the kids run through from Final Fantasy 6. There are two unique things that they do here where we have the secondary dominant. There was definitely one point in there at least where it was a secondary dominant chord. I won't get into what that is again, but you can look it up. And there's also a definite borrowed chord modulation, which is basically in some variation. I don't have the sheet music in front of me, but if you're in C major, it's like going from there to E flat major or to A flat major. Something like that, where you're switching over to a, without getting too deep into the weeds of what the music theory is, the key of something that is in the relative minor, or sorry, the parallel minor of what you are currently playing in. And the Arnie Town theme uses both of those really, really nicely. And it's also this really nice kind of plaintive acoustic guitar. And it's in 3/4 kind of waltzy sort of sound. So already in that one song, we have all the elements that we've seen from the earlier town themes we're talking about here kind of summed up into this one. It's not quite as dissonant or quite as ear-pulling throughout as the Dali theme is, but there are about 2 sections in there I heard where it really tugs at you and it forces your ear to go, huh? And then it continues from there. Just not quite as dissonantly as the Dali theme does.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for bringing that up, Ira. It's one of my favorite pieces, and it's going to be so long before we ever get to talk about Chrono Cross on the other show. Any opportunity to do that makes me happy. All right, let's do some guessing. Now we get to the really fun part of the show.
Let's do it. Who's going first?
I think we should start with Ira again, and we're going to guess.
I already have a guess for Ira. For some reason, I don't know why, but I'm going to guess he picked the song from Zozo in Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, man, that's such a good guess. I know he loves that piece, and if he didn't, he might be kicking himself that he didn't choose it. I was going to go with Troya from Final Fantasy IV.
I considered so many different.
Yeah, me too. This was the hardest one to pull one from.
Yeah.
So I tried to think about what it means to me for there to be town music or music for a particular location of people. And we talked a lot about the chill ones and how you need the quiet moments and the thing to fight for. So I chose one along those lines. Zozo is an excellent choice. I definitely considered it. I definitely considered Troya, because they both give a sense of what that particular place is. Zozo is such an interesting dichotomy to what so many of these other places are, and it's definitely not that. And it's kind of an FU to everybody in that whole world. It's not the one I chose, but it was definitely like top 4 or 5.
Zozo is one of the places in 6 that like sticks out to me the most as like, this place does not fit with hardly anything else in the game, and yet it still fits. They still made it work.
Well, and it's so emblematic of what happens when a society pushes the people who don't fit off to the side, right? And I think that's why it's such a cool piece of music. But I kind of went with the more, this is a safe place song, but in a different way.
I forgot I had one other guess for what you might pick, and I just brought up what you sent me, so I know that I'm wrong on this one too. I was like, he might not think of it as town music, because I didn't necessarily, but then I thought of it was Balam Garden.
That was another on the list.
That was another one I know you love, but I absolutely love what you chose here. Yeah.
Solid.
Hammerhead.
So what are we hearing here?
Yeah, it is a little bit of that. This is our home base. This is our safe place. Especially at the beginning of the game, you come back to Taka's place at Hammerhead Station over and over again, and so it's got that feeling of you're safe here, but it's also outside the Crown City, right? Where that's where the barrier is. That's where real safety is. And these people out here, well, they don't get supplies as much, so their cars are older. They're not getting a whole lot of supply runs of food, so you got to go out to the farm and bring it back. You got to go out and hunt and bring it back. So it's got a bit of an edge to it. So that's why I like it. It's a safe place, but also electric guitar.
You're talking my language, electric guitar. Heck yeah.
Very bluesy, right? A lot of you got that organ going on there. You got a walking bass line doing some funky fun things. Like, this is quite different from the music we've been listening to so far on the show today. Yeah.
Yeah, the minute that the guitar came in, my ear, being a guitar player, that's what Airship Overdrive does. It's guitar-based, covers. Is I was trying to analyze like what kind of pedals are they using in this? What kind of effects are they playing with? There's a little bit of delay. There's what sounds like some sort of possible like a tube screamer style overdrive going on in there. At one point towards the end of the guitar lick, there's like a slight phaser or slight EQ thing. I don't know if my ear was playing tricks on me. But this sounds like the kind of song also where at any point someone could just walk by the player and be like, "See ya, space cowboy," and then just like wander off. Like it has that exact same vibe of like the space noir cowboy bebop type thing.
Yeah, good.
Love it.
All right. You got any guesses for what I picked?
So at least help me like separate it. Is it something from the mainline games 1 through 10?
I did pick a mainline 1 through 10 game this time. I didn't go off the board with the tactics last time.
My guess is I think I didn't write it down. I think it's called Under Her Control, but it's the Delling City music from 8.
Nice. I like that as a guess. I picked 2 like I did last time, a safer guess and a more out there guess. I picked Besaid Island as sort of my safe guess because it's kind of chill, and then Wall Market as the more out there, kind of like the Zozo guess.
Wall Market was my second guess for Drew.
All right, I'll give you guys that one then. I will. I had a backup in case someone else had chosen that one, but since this is our first time of all the pieces of music in Final Fantasy, of all the pieces that I considered, there were several others that I almost went with, but I did end up choosing this one for the main reason. It was like, what do I most want to ask Ryan about? And it came down to this.
Hit me. Oh, what a bop, man. What a just puts you in the mood.
Based on vibes, I think we were right.
Yeah, and then it's like there's this, and then it's called, I think, The Oppressed People is the other one that plays kind of like in the Sector 7 Wall Market kind of areas.
Right.
Yeah. What was your question about this one?
Well, in many ways it seems like a very simple piece, right? It's basically a crunchy techno bass line, and then the melody is just ba-da-da-da. There's not much going on in it. And so I guess my question is, why is it so compelling to me? Because a lot of times you hear a piece of music that's this simple in a way, and I know it's mainly that riff is so tasty. Yes. I love the main Final Fantasy VII theme in the background as a counter melody, kind of in a minor chord and building tension, all of that. But
Yep, I was going to point that out if you didn't.
yeah, but to me, it's just, it really does come down to like ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum. Like what? Like sometimes you try to bang a riff. I don't know.
So I guess is your question kind of like, why do I, or what are my guesses of why you like it so much?
I guess so, or what makes that particular riff so compelling?
Like the bass riff there?
Yeah.
Well, the bass riff, it's very straightforward. I don't have the music in front of me, but it's basically based around It's basically based around a bass line that's in just some sort of bluesy jazz setting. Dun, 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 dun. Octaves are used back and forth there, and the thing that's being played on, which is some sort of like synthy bass, techno bass of some kind, it does have what we call an envelope filter effect happening to it, which is basically something with synthesizers primarily, where when it's either like when a note is played, how hard it's played, how long it's being sustained for, the synthesizer actually changes the tone quality of that, which is in this case how you get kind of like that wah pedal sound. You hear that a lot, and it's a unique sound that you don't really hear in games in general. Having this, talk box bass line while you're walking through the slums of Midgar, it's just odd, right? Like it's out of place, but not in a bad way whatsoever. I love this piece and the other one, which is the ba-doom boom boom ba-doom doom doom. Yeah, like I love both of those themes that play a lot in the Midgar kind of city wall market type areas, because they don't sound like anything else. It's like you're with people and you're hearing this theme on like the boombox on someone's front step as you're walking around.
Yeah.
The other parts where it's the arpeggios, the doo-doo-doo-doon, doo-doo-doo-doon, they're just this like clever little, like, I don't even know how to explain it really, but it's just, it fits, because when so much of the piece is based in the bass line, you have to have something to complement it, right? You couldn't put another melody down there, but since your bass part is also serving as the melody for a lot of this, you can't have the middle or higher stuff being that complicated without making the whole piece become really, really chaotic potentially. And so having these little flourishy doo-doo-doo-doo things at the top, they fit in, but they don't take over what's happening in the area here. And like I said, this and the other main kind of city slums theme, it's called something like the Oppressed People, I think. They both have this sound that's like, I could hear this coming out of someone's boombox 2 doors down in this city, and it would fit in really, really well. Does that kind of like hit some beats that might be coming to your mind?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I definitely, I wanted to bring it up because I knew we were talking about Town 1, kids run through the city, and Dali, those idyllic village, that though some of them might have more. And this is just so tonally different. And I love showing off Uematsu's diversity, his variety. I think it's one of the things that really sets him apart as a composer, is that he doesn't just have 1 or 2 sounds that he can play in. And this is just so different from everything else because he's composing for a place that's so different. And most Final Fantasies don't have underground sewer places with brothels, and that's not a normal, especially to that point in Final Fantasy. He really wanted to drive home that point. It's almost like the way the writers were like, hey, we can swear now, let's have 2 characters that swear all the time. Mm-hmm. It's like Uematsu's version of that was like, ooh, I can do dirty underground city music, and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, this is a point in Uematsu's writing career for Final Fantasy, at least, where we heard like little bits and pieces of his love for prog rock, which a man after my own heart. Progressive rock, I love it. He's a huge fan of things like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Genesis, and you hear snippets of this in the soundtracks of not so much 4, but 5 and 6 especially. And then in 7, when they knew the setting was going to be semi-futuristic, but kind of like grungy realism. I don't know what the exact like steampunky term would be for it, but when they made the setting this, you can tell that he latched onto it and he was like, oh sweet, I can write more rock based music and have it fit in seamlessly. So it's not just like, oh, we hear Battle at the Big Bridge and that's the one big like rock and roll thing we hear in the whole game. We hear this quite a bit in this one, or this style at least.
I also want to point out that he gets the overworld theme in there a little bit. which I think is really neat.
Yeah, Drew mentioned that. I think you mentioned it a minute ago, right, Drew?
Right as you stepped out, I mentioned that for a quick second, but it is worth coming back to because it's so cleverly done.
Which is also Danny Elfman's Batman theme. Just going to put that out there.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's slightly different. Also, believe it or not, that theme they borrowed briefly in the Dali theme again. I didn't bring it up, but in the second or third paragraph, there's a part that goes something like, I think it's like, if you listen to it, and that's just one note away from.
Nice.
Yeah. He did it again. They did another callback.
At the very end of Final Fantasy VIII, in like I think the Extreme or one of those pieces, when time is compressing and all that, he puts the Final Fantasy VII main theme in there again because he's a genius.
Tuck it in there. The Final Fantasy VIII credits music also has a lot of really good callbacks to like the main theme from 1. The prelude is snuck in there. The credits theme for both 7 and 8 are fantastically well done. They're so good.
We'll have to do credits thing sometime. And I also just wanted to make sure that, somebody talks about Final Fantasy VII on this show because it never gets enough attention. That game just can't quite get into these kinds of conversations,
Justice for 7. We need a remake now.
All right. Ira, do you have a guess for Ryan's pick?
I made a couple guesses again, and I'm still trying to figure this guy out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'll help you out a little bit on this one. I forced myself to break out of the Uematsu trend. So this is not an Uematsu song.
All right. So I went with a safer and a more chancy pick. So one of them is Uematsu. I thought maybe Gold Saucer because but then I thought because we talked about when we were talking last time about Robin Astra maybe getting its own thing and you wanting to maybe move on from Uematsu. So that's why I went for 16 Hideaway.
Neither of those, but both good songs.
Yeah. Well, now I'm thrown off because I was really hoping you were going to pick Fisherman's Horizon.
That was one of my top choices. It really, really was. But I'm trying to save that if we ever do like a super calm music episode, like we have to have that one on there.
It's the all-time study music piece.
If you really wanted to go like outside, you'd do like Crystal Chronicles or something.
Yeah, Crystal Chronicles. So this is where I don't know what of your outside Uematsu stuff. I'll go with the no, that I'm not even sure that counts as town. I was going to say something. I was like, that's not even really town music. That's area music.
Pick one.
I was going to go 12 with like the Dalmascan.
I love that theme. It's not that, but I do love the Estersand theme. It's got a very like bright and like pulsing kind of theme to it without sounding frantic. Let me ask you guys, I got the link there shared now. How much Final Fantasy 14 did either of you play?
Oh, some. I played through Stormblood.
Oh, so you've played a lot. You played more than I have actually then.
Okay.
I never finished the first game scenario, but I did like those 3 towns at the beginning.
So this one, what I'll ask is, once Drew pulls this up here, is if possible, Drew might know it from the title he sees, but Ira, kind of close your eyes and see if you can identify not like the exact name or anything, but see if you could point what kind of town this music might be referring to, and then I'll explain what it is. So, Ira, if
Yeah.
if you don't know it already, like what this is, what does this song sound like it should fit to?
The repetition sounds to me like call and response, which makes me think pirates or sailors.
Yes, and there's more to it than just that. So this is a very sailing, piratey sort of setting. This is a song that's called "Salt Swept," and it's from Final Fantasy 14, and it's played primarily, I believe, in Aleport or Alaport, in the like kind of Lenoskia area. But I've been told that it also is played in like other small settlements, but it's primarily port towns, right? And so you're spot on when it's like something about this makes me think that it is sailing music. And there's a handful of things that I want to talk about and why I love this tune compared to other Final Fantasy stuff that does this. The first thing is, yes, there is a little bit of a sort of pseudo call and response sort of thing in here, which would make a lot of sense for any folk song. A lot of folk songs from all parts of the world have call and response elements or solo chorus elements, or maybe like think about like an army running thing, you know, I don't know what I've been told. And then everyone says, I don't know what I've been told. It kind of has that, but there's also a few elements that just make it sound like what our ears know as a kind of British Isles, European sounding sailing song. The first thing is that when the melody first comes in, we have a strong emphasis on a perfect fifth or a perfect fifth range. And between that B and F sharp, we hear that. I don't know a ton about sailing songs and their history or enough of them to speak to this, but I do know that frequently these descents of a fifth or ascents of a fifth were used as kind of like a work song sort of thing, that when the person leading the song sings this, you do this as the person working without having to, you know, verbalize it per se. If you think of the classic like yo ho, that's that interval. It's a perfect fifth. Drew, do you have a question?
I did, and then you also made me think about the dwarves in Snow White. But as you were playing, I thought of Greensleeves and Christmas music, which is another. It's got those sometimes like pirate music is just more aggressive Christmas music.
Put that on a shirt. I need that. Pirate music is just more aggressive Christmas music.
True, like, right?
But it has that sound, right? It has that kind of like northwestern European sound, that British Isles type sound. It's also in a mode that's not just major or minor. And we haven't talked a whole lot about modes in this series yet. Do you guys know what modes are? If I say that just off the cuff.
I mean, after you just said major and minor, I suppose I know what those two things mean, right? Like you generally get happier, more pleasant sounds with your major chords. Minor chords are more built to create dissonance and sad or tension or whatever else, right? And so I would assume if you're working more in one mode or the other that you're talking about or tone, maybe, right? Or mood. I mentioned vibes earlier. This is the vibe that
we're going to write a vibes-based music theory textbook. Ira, do you have any guesses?
What vibe is this song in?
What vibe is this song in? Ira, do you have any guesses or any background on what modes are?
Not really, no.
So the very simple way I'll explain it here, and again, you can look up tons of videos and books and stuff on this elsewhere. This is one of the basic music theory concepts. If I play C to C on a keyboard, that's our major mode, our C major scale, right? The actual name for this is actually called Ionian, and it refers to how many skips you have of whole steps and half steps going from one note to the next. And we're working right now just in a 7-note scale that repeats at the eighth, right, at the octave. But as you work your way around the circle of fourths or fifths, depending on if you're adding sharps or adding flats, you can still play C to C and just get a different sound depending on what notes are in there. And the most common one is that if you add 3 flats or remove 3 sharps, whatever variation you have, you get the minor version, which is also called Aeolian. But there are way more than just that. And if you were to for example, just take 1 sharp added to it, so C to C, but we're going to add the first sharp in the circle of fifths, which is F sharp, we would get this sound. And there's that one note that's just a little bit like, something's not quite right here. This is called our Lydian scale. And there's 8 different forms, or I guess actually 7, because it would repeat the octave, but there's 7 different modes. a lot of this quote unquote piratey music is in Dorian mode. And what Dorian is, if I play it in a C major scale or a C bass, is going to be C to C with only E flat and B flat added to it. And it's a minor key because if you take your root triad, C, E flat, G, that's a minor triad, but we don't have the A flat that a natural minor scale would have. We go to A natural instead. And this mode or key center, you can think of it in both ways, is what a lot of this music is written in. A lot of things, even like What Would You Do with a Drunken Sailor, is in a Dorian mode. And that's in that same mode here. So without even having any reference to like what the harmonies are per se, or a whole lot of the orchestration yet, which we're going to get to that shortly as well, we already have a bunch of things that make us think piratey, sailing song, work song. A focus on a perfect fifth interval. It's written in a Dorian key, which is going to be kind of minor, but not how most minor music to our ears is heard. And it also has these call and response sort of elements to it. There's also, in the orchestration, we don't hear a drum set playing. What do we hear for the percussion sounds?
There's those big bangy drums. Again, more technical terms for you. I don't want to confuse the people, but I have no idea what the name for them. I see them all the time. Every time I've ever gone to a Ren Fest, you see people walking around banging away on them things.
Yeah, there's one of two things they're using here because they sound similar based on how they're constructed and how they're played. It could be a literal like frame drum. If you look up what's called a bodhran, it's spelled Bodhran. It's like a frame drum used in Scots-Irish music. It could sound like one of those, which is what Drew's describing, like just a large, big, drum. Or it could also literally be wooden crates. And a lot of sailing songs, when they didn't have instruments that they wanted to safely transport, or they just couldn't because they were too large or whatever, they would literally just find empty crates, empty barrels, and they would use those as the music. If you want to look more into that, look up Afro-Cuban music and how a lot of stuff from like way back in the slave trade, when people were brought over without their instruments, they would use the same rhythms and same melodies when they sang stuff and played things, but they would use the literal like casements of things just lying around to play the parts on. And Northwestern European music is no different. They would use these same things, and then hopefully someone had a violin or someone had a little concertina, which is like a small accordion type thing, and they would use that to lead the melody, give them their source pitch and everything. But just with those elements alone, they made a melody. And this is, by the way, this is not Uematsu. This is by, let me look it up real quick. I have it written down.
Is it Soken?
It was Soken. What's the first name of Soken?
Yoshimato, I can't remember.
It's something like that. But Soken wrote this song, and it sounds like a very just chill sailing song for all of those reasons. It's something that honestly Uematsu didn't do a whole lot of when he was doing his writing, because there were so few chances for it to be basically like a yo-ho sailing song without sounding out of place. He does some folk music sounding things in other places and whatnot, but this is one of the only times that I remember like entering one of the zones where the song was playing, and just immediately I was like, oh, whoever wrote this, they had a grasp on sailing songs, because without even seeing where I am, if someone just played it for me like Ira just did, you go, oh, it's a piratey song, it's a sailing song. And wouldn't you know it, it's played, I think, exclusively in port towns, primarily Aleport in 14.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. It's Masayoshi. That's what it is.
Masayoshi. I knew the word Yoshi was in there because that's how I remembered it. It was like Masayoshi Soken. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and thank you to everyone who's reached out to us. Feel free to let us know what we missed, got wrong, or should have mentioned, plus anything you'd like to hear in the future down in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to Everything is Final Fantasy on Patreon, YouTube, and all social media platforms, and please do the same for Airship Overdrive, Ryan's project, where you can hear arrangements of some of your favorite video game music, some of our favorite non-Final Fantasy Fantasy pieces from Airship Overdrive include Castlevania and Journey, so be sure to check those out. Join us next time when we wander the streets of Rabanastre.